World War III will be like the one that Einstein predicted. He said, I don't know what weapons will be used in World War III, but in World War IV, they'll be using sticks and stones.
Prepare for shock and awe. Gold, silver, copper, and zinc. This 30-cent a share company could be looking at life-changing gains. Even Resource Capital Inc., a $1 billion private equity fund made up of expert mining analysts and investors, just quietly took an 18% stake in the company. Learn more at crushthestreet.com/hardassets.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into crushthestreet.com. My name is Kenneth Amaduri, and I'm here today with Gerald Celente. He's a trend forecaster and publisher of the Trends Journal. He's a business consultant and author who has made some alarming forecasts in our global financial markets. And one thing you're going to find out about my guest here, if you don't already know him, which I'll actually be surprised if you don't, is that he has a lot of heart. And first of all, Gerald, thanks for coming on the show with me today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, I really appreciate you. And let's start off with this. The QE, and I've heard you talk about this in other interviews, that the central banks have been creating, specifically our central bank, has been entering emerging markets. Can you tell us about how central banks are speculating in foreign markets and what this is creating around the world?
Well, what happened was, with all the QE and the record low interest rate, this was considered hot money. In other words, they're pumping it out there. You're getting it for almost free. So what happened was that you had a lot of mutual funds and others loaning money getting money and investing in banks and corporations overseas and countries. So you have, trillions of dollars of loans that went into emerging market countries when their interest rates were higher, when their currencies were stronger. They were getting cheap dollars when all of this quantitative easing began. So now you have a reversal in the emerging market. So all this money that went into borrowing and investment into the emerging markets, it has to be paid back in dollars. But the emerging markets are submerged. So, for example, you're seeing currencies such as Brazilian real, the Malaysian currency, the ringgit, the rupiah, Indonesia, one after another, they're hitting lows. Because what's happened is you have a deflationary cycle in commodity prices. Because there's too much supply and not enough demand. And a lot of these emerging markets grew from their natural resources that they were exporting, particularly to China. So now that China's slowing down and the global economy is slowing down, so too are the emerging market economies. Their currencies are declining rapidly. So what does all that mean? They have these $1 trillion in debt that have to be paid off. And they have to pay it off now with a cheaper currency.
Things went up on them.
Because the interest rates in the United States are going up. And when they raise interest rates, finally, when they do, you're going to see these currencies devalue even more, which means they have to pay back more money than they have, because they're paying it back in devalued currency. But the debt is based in dollars. So the stronger the dollar gets, the more money they have to pay back, as their economies are going down and inflation is going up. So what we have is an emerging market crisis in front of us.
So this is an emerging market crisis. What's the dynamic of the global economy and how the U.S. is tied into it? I remember Peter Schiff back in 2008 or whatever, 2006, 2005, he was big on decoupling. You know, the U.S. is the root of the problem, and we have the rest of the world which is going to decouple itself away from the U.S. So what is the dynamic between the U.S. and the rest of the world? Do you see the U.S. collapsing for the same reasons as these emerging markets, or for different reasons?
Well, for both. Everything's tied together in one way or another, in terms of exports, imports, and the central banks are all working in collusion. I mean, they talk to each other virtually every day, and you see the moves, for example, when the United States in 2014 ended quantitative easing. I believe it was October 27th or 28th of 2014. Just 3 days later, the Central Bank of Japan announced a bigger round and another round of Abenomics. So the markets go down, then they go up. So I'm saying it's all tied in, but I don't see the BRIC nations and the other ones picking up steam and leaving the Americans behind. The only reason the dollar is finding strength is because all these other countries are so weak. And when you think of the names, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and of course South Africa with the BRICS, Brazil's in a recession. Russia's in a recession. China's in a massive slowdown, ready to explode with all their excess capacity and excess housing. And then India, India's holding its own for what it is, but, it's no joyride. So the United States is really tied into all of it, and it's a global issue. It's a global recession. You're hearing it now from the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. You're hearing the IMF downgrading, the World Bank downgrading, the World Trade Organization downgrading growth, one after another. It's a global recession. But remember, all of those emerging markets have to pay back that massive debt that they accumulated when commodity prices were going up, when China was booming. They have to pay it now back. They have to pay it back in dollars as their currencies are declining. So the dollar is only strong because all these other currencies and countries are weaker than we are.
China, their stock market had a big correction. The Shanghai Composite this year, it went down from its high roughly 40%, and we've seen it come back some. But it's worth noting that they actually are up roughly 50% from January. Do you think this is just all on air? I know that's kind of a softball for you, but just guys like Jim Rogers, he's all for the China and the emerging markets, and I'm just curious, are you not as optimistic, and is this like the first leg down for much more pain to come in the future?
When you look at the Chinese equity market, the government boosted that after the housing market started to collapse. And when you look at the players in the Chinese market, 80% of them, it's the retail customer. It's the people playing lotto, basically. And those are facts. So it was a juiced market. It's not a real market. And the other factor is the only reason it's rebounded is because of the Chinese, the national team, they call it, the intervention, pumping in hundreds of billions of dollars, buying up equities, pulling stocks off the market that are going down, prohibiting people from selling grade A shares for 6 months, and prohibiting shorts. The market's it's a totally rigged market, and China is on the verge of a massive collapse, as we see it. In 20 years, from 1995, China's debt was $500 billion. In 20 years now, it's approaching $30 trillion.
Wow.
How are they going to pay it back?
So
those numbers can't be ignored.
Yeah. No, I know. And I think it's a shock to people because a lot of us, especially in the alternative news and maybe those that just weren't as educated, really thought that the U.S. was the one that was going to suffer the most. And, we kind of gave these other countries the benefit of the doubt that maybe they had their ducks in a row a little better than we did. And the U.S. was going to fall off the map. And these emerging markets were going to kind of pick up the slack and absorb all the demand that the U.S. and it was traditionally taking up. So, I mean, and what you're saying is that there's problems in a lot of other places and major bubbles being created. So,
yeah, there's some $25 trillion worth of speculation went on, and debt load has increased. So, since this whole quantitative easing scheme began. So there's really no way out of it.
Gerald, I want to still talk about the dollar here, but talking and shifting gears a little bit to the petrodollar, could Russia beat the U.S. in a World War III, and are you concerned of an imminent war happening? World War III will be like the one that Einstein predicted. He said, I don't know what weapons will be used in World War III. But in World War IV, they'll be using sticks and stones. What do you mean by that? Well, in other words, it'll be complete annihilation. Uh-huh. I mean, anybody that thinks Russia's going to go down they're out of their minds. Let's put this in perspective. The Americans can't win in Afghanistan. And he's fighting these guys with what? Rifles and I don't even, they're barely on horseback. They can't win in Iraq. They destroyed Syria. You got one losing event after another. They're going to beat Russia? Anybody thinks they're going to beat Napoleon? He took, 423,000 men to Moscow, came back with 10,000. Hitler launched the largest military offensive in world history. The largest. And he lost. You don't beat the Russians. They're not going anywhere. So to have war with them is insanity. But insanity rules. All you have to do is watch the presidential reality show, and it's live and in person. This little boy, this little kid, Marco Rubio, I can't stand these guys, by the way, most of them. And he's the kind of guy I hated in college and high school. That was the brown-noser, the suck-up, the debater on who wanted to be class president. He made this moronic comment that the jihadists and the terrorists hate Americans because we let our girls go to school and women drive cars. He actually said that. He actually said that in the last debate. Yeah. How could anybody? This is a game show. It's not a debate. So what I'm talking about is that it's total dysfunction. You have stupid, ignorant people like that little clown of a boy and like the rest of them. Shooting their fat mouths off, and none of these guys could fight their way out of a paper bag. Not one of them. Not a man among them. And they're talking about war with Russia. We got to get rid of the jihadists. We got to degrade and destroy. It's sickness. They're mentally ill. And nobody wants to call a spade, a psychopath, or a sociopath. Listen to that clown Carson. Yeah, I was awarded a scholarship, he writes in his book, to West Point. Well, I wasn't awarded it. I never wrote that. I only wrote it in words, because now I'm going to lie and make up another bullshit story. And he goes on, they offered me. What did they offer you? One lying little piece of crap after another. So when you're talking about war, you heard George W. Bush
an insane guy in front of everybody's eyes. He could barely walk and chew gum at the same time, sends America to war against Afghanistan. You're either with us or you're with the terrorists. And the people buy the BS. There's no courage out there. There's no self-respect. Because if anybody with courage and self-respect, they'd be in the streets right now. It's gone in this country.
Mr. Celente, I wanted to ask you, and it kind of ties into this, with the ignorance in our politicians, but this dynamic with this new world order, do you really think that the leaders at the top are in on it, and I say that with quotations, in on the military-industrial complex, in on this, whether you want to call it a conspiracy or not, to establish a dominance with our world reserve currency in the Middle East? Or are they just puppets for groups and select people behind?
There's no conspiracy theory as I see it. And I'll give you the perfect example as to why what you see is what you get. You saw the new book come out by George Bush Sr., where he goes after Cheney for pushing the war against Iraq. And then you read the comments by Baby Boy Bush in his book, talking about how he met with his dad on Christmas Day at Camp David in 2002. And he uses the words to the effect that, only the president could make these decisions. Well, I have the quote right here, actually. Let me pull it up. He said, we talked about the issue, however, over Christmas 2000 at Camp David. I gave Dad an update on my strategy. He goes on to say that, where is it? His father says to him, you know how tough war is, son. You have to try everything you can to avoid war. No, he doesn't. He doesn't know how tough war is. George Sr.'s never been in. And he goes on to say, the younger former president said he made the decisions on his own. I never asked Dad what I should do. We both knew that this was a decision that only the president could make. This was a decision that only the dictator, only the emperor, only a sick little creep like George W. Bush could make. The people let them do it. They want to make an excuse that there's something going on that they can't see because they're afraid to believe the fool that they see is the fool in charge. Oh, the banks, everybody knows they're rigging the game. You talk about the economy, they just appointed three new Fed heads for banks around the country. Dallas, Philadelphia, Minneapolis. Where are they from? Goldman Sachs. Who's the guy running who's running the European Central Bank over there? Mario Draghi. Where's he from? Goldman Sachs. Who's the guy running the bank over in England, the Bank of England? Mark Carney. Where's he from? Goldman Sachs.
There's a common denominator here.
But I'm saying the common denominator is what you see is what it is.
Right.
So there's nothing, is this going on? Is that going on? They're doing it in front of your face.
Yeah.
Too big to fail. Who was the guy that brought that on? Henry Paulson. Where did he come from when he was Treasury Secretary, before he was Treasury Secretary in the Bush? Goldman Sachs. Low-life guy who killed Glass-Steagall Act. Put it into play. Robert Rubin. It's a $150 million job after deregulating the financial sector from Citigroup. Where did he come from? Goldman Sachs. Is there a conspiracy theory? It's not a conspiracy theory. It's robbery and murder.
So they're behind the donations. They're behind the central banks. They got a lot of power, and they're able to influence the decisions of our leaders. So, is it fair to say? Is it fair to say?
Fascism.
Is it fair to say?
No, really, it's the merger of state and corporate powers. By definition, that's fascism.
Wow.
Yeah, that's Mussolini's definition, not mine.
Trump says he's going to come out and he's not going to be influenced by special interests. Is this something you believe?
I believe Trump for who he is and what he is. If you like Hitler, you love Trump. He's a guy. He's a power-hungry, self-serving egomaniac. It's all about me. All about me. Did I ever tell you about me? Let me tell you more about me. I can't stand these guys like Trump. He complained that the wages are too high in America. And that people have to work harder to get their way up. Here's a guy born on third base and thought he hit a triple. His old man left him an estimated $400 million. This guy's lived on Easy Street his whole life, and he talks like, oh, I'm so great. Oh, I'm so great. You got there because of your old man, little boy.
Yeah, not a whole lot of people are pointing him out on that. And,
no, because you got a whole bunch of little prostitutes out there with the size of the cojones, the size of mothballs.
Gerald, there's a lot of problems out there, and as you pointed out, the economy is very unstable, a lot of volatility. Where's the value that you see at the moment?
Well, the only values that I see, and again, I don't give financial advice. I'm still bullish on gold, even though gold is getting whacked. And because why would I want to own any of these currencies? Why should I? I mean, I can see that. I mean, what is the United States, going on to $19 trillion in debt? And that's without all of the, the other things that we owe, the pensions, the benefits, the Social Security, and all that. It's like $250 trillion or something. And why would I want to have the Chinese yuan when they have, their debt to GDP ratio is 200 and something %, or yen, or lira, or Turkish lira. Why would I want to have any real? So of course I'm still bullish on gold because at some point this thing is going to collapse. And I also, I have to say with real estate, depending what market you're in. When I talked about China. Money's flooding out of China, flooding out of emerging markets. So there's 7.3 billion people in the world, and the ones with money are going to go to safe haven places. So real estate like London, New York, San Francisco, the better cities. I could see it, continuing to be pretty solid, even if there's a down blip. But long term in those kind of cities, the trend line is up because you have so much money, so many people leaving so many different countries to find safer havens. Again, that could change in a day. If there's a terrorist strike, I remember. I'm in New York. I remember what happened on 9/11, and how many people. I'm upstate New York now. And how many people flooded up here, to get away. So something like that happens, the whole game changes. But absent of that, I still see real estate in safe places as being, a good investment. Anything having to do with aging and health care, have aging global population. So anything, in those kind of areas, safe, clean food, water, all those things are going to continue to grow and market share of them. And then you look at, there's going to be a lot of opportunities too, because as the bigs keep getting bigger, they leave market gaps. And you can see it going on as we're speaking with Macy's. Macy's bought up all these other companies years ago, and when you buy up all these companies and take on so much debt, and you have very thin profit margins, when things turn down a little bit, you really get whacked, and they're getting whacked. So they're going to leave market opportunities. Same with Walmart, same with all of them. So it's not all gloom and doom. And the best part about it is if the people would wake up and realize all they have to do is tune into the presidential reality show and look at the cowards, freaks, and fools running it. And that the opportunity to do something new has never been greater. The people are ready for it. But it's up to we, the people, to make it happen.
Right.
So, it's not that I'm not a gloom and doomer. When you look what's going on in Catalonia, in Spain. Now they're talking about secession, and it's becoming a reality. The small party, the Cup Party, came out of nowhere. Regular people did it. And that's what Americans have lost the fight for. And we could, we could do it. We could change this. So the opportunity, as I see it, has never been greater.
Well, that's great advice right there, and I agree with you. Facing reality isn't being a doom and gloomer, it's facing reality, and once you're able to do that, you can make decisions on how to thrive in this new economy. So we're definitely going to have your links in the video description. Mr. Celente, thank you so much for joining me today. If people wanted to reach out to you and maybe learn a little more about what you do, would you just be able to just share in 30 seconds to a minute about what they will find and what they'll get?
Sure. Our website is trendsresearch.com. It's plural, trendsresearch.com. Of course, we have the Trends Journal, the Trends Monthly, Trends This Week. And each weekday night we do a broadcast, Trends in the News, and we have conferences. We're having another one that's going to be down in Florida, actually, a 5-day conference, but it's going to be more than just a conference. It's going to be whole health healing. There'll be a whole event. You could find out more about that when you go to our conference links on our page, trendsresearch.com. And again, we're the only magazine out there that we know of that publishes history before it happens. And we have a discount request page there for people who can't afford the full price. And, there's no risk if you don't like the Trends Journal. It's a full money-back guarantee. So we're doing a lot. And, of course, we also launched Occupy Peace this year. And our website's occupypeace.us. Bring home all the troops, no more bases overseas, secure the homeland, rebuild America, put the money back to work to rebuild America, and force Congress to vote to go to war, rather than giving the emperor-in-chief the right to do it, as we are right now in Syria. It's against the Constitution. Congress has not voted to give the president the power to go there, and Congress are a bunch of cowards, so they refuse to do it. So it's up to we, the people, to make the changes happen. And again, if they could do it in Spain, we could do it in the United States.
Mr. Celente, thank you so much for all that you do, and thank you again for coming on the show with me. I really appreciate it. We'll hopefully do this again in the future.
Okay, my pleasure. All the best. Thank you.